In case you weren't following the NFL Combine this past weekend, you missed quite the show. A number of players improved their draft stock, while a number of players also hurt their stock. There was one player, however, that took the weekend by storm and really got all the social media talking. After setting numerous Combine records, Florida quarterback Anthony Richardson is officially the most athletic quarterback we've ever seen. After showing off this weekend, he has emerged as a potential name that could go #1 overall in the upcoming NFL draft. Before we get to today's video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are that you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel. So make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. I'm posting college football videos all off season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. Anthony Richardson attended Eastside High School in Gainesville, Florida. During his time as the quarterback there, he threw for 4,600 yards with 37 passing touchdowns. On the ground, he rushed for over 1,600 yards, averaging 7 yards a carry. He also added 41 rushing touchdowns as well. Richardson was a 3-star recruit and was rated as the number 12 dual-threat quarterback in the nation via the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings. He chose to stay home as he committed to Florida in July of 2018. However, things changed months later, as Richardson backed off that pledge the following February when Dan Mullen and his staff began pursuing Carson Beck, another Florida quarterback who won the state of Florida's Mr. Football for 2018. Just a month later, Beck committed to Georgia. After he committed to the Bulldogs, he revealed that he named Florida as his leader in order to get attention of the Georgia staff. Well, it worked out for him. Not too long after, Richardson committed to Florida once again and posted this to social media. After I opened my recruiting process back up in February, I invested a lot of time into trying to find the right school for me. Talking to different coaches, my parents, and my coaches always had an idea of which schools I thought would be the perfect fit for me. I thought long and hard about it and realized that choosing a school was bigger than just football. It's about education, feeling comfortable, and knowing what's projected in my future. Out of all the schools that have been recruiting me, one school has stood out the most to me since the beginning of my recruitment process. With that being said, I will be committing to the University of Florida. Richardson spent the 2020 season as Florida's third-string quarterback. He sat behind Kyle Trask and Emory Jones. Trask was one of the top quarterbacks in the nation that season, while Jones barely saw the field. Richardson did manage to play a few snaps for the Gators that season. He made his collegiate debut at the end of October against Missouri, where he rushed 3 times for 15 yards. A few weeks later against Arkansas, he threw his first collegiate pass, but it couldn't have gone any worse as he was picked off for an interception. Richardson would redeem himself as the next pass he threw came in the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma, throwing a 27-yard touchdown on his only attempt of the game. He also added 42 yards on the ground on only 3 carries. Entering the 2021 season, Richardson was expected to move up a spot on the depth chart and be Florida's backup quarterback behind Emory Jones. He turned heads in the first few games of the season. Although he wasn't the starting quarterback, Richardson rushed for 160 yards with a rushing touchdown in the first game of the year. Then, in week 2, he rushed for 115 yards with a rushing score while throwing for 150 yards with 2 touchdowns on only 3 pass attempts. These plays were coming in garbage time against some pretty bad competition, but Anthony Richardson was lighting up the stat sheet and began to turn heads, having some question whether or not he should be the starting quarterback instead of Emory Jones. Richardson would play sparingly over the next month of the season. Over his next 3 games, he rushed for 75 yards on 17 attempts. He did attempt 26 passes, with 17 of them coming against LSU. Against the Tigers, Richardson saw the most action of his career as he threw for 170 yards with 3 passing touchdowns and adding a rushing score. In Florida's next game, Richardson made his first career collegiate start. It was quite the ask as he had to face Georgia, not the ideal opponent for your first career start. And, as expected, he did pretty poorly as he threw for only 80 yards with 2 interceptions. Richardson appeared in only one game the rest of the way. Against Florida State, he completed 5 of 7 passes for 50 yards with a passing touchdown. That offseason, Emory Jones transferred, leaving it open to Anthony Richardson to be Florida's starting quarterback. He had shown flashes of massive potential, so now he'd finally have his opportunity to show what he could do when given the keys to the offense. Well, he sure looked the part to begin the 2022 season. Florida opened up the year at home against number 7 Utah, and how did Richardson do? Well, he rushed for over 100 yards with 3 rushing scores, while also completing over 70% of his passes with just under 200 yards through the air. As if those numbers weren't impressive enough, Florida handed Utah the loss. After that performance, Florida climbed into the top 15 of the AP poll, and Anthony Richardson quickly rose in the Heisman odds and was one of the betting favorites after only one game. Seeing what he was able to do against Utah, many people believed he was on the verge of a breakout campaign. Well, that was pretty much his best game of the entire season. The following week against Kentucky, Richardson was absolutely awful. He rushed for only 4 yards on 6 carries, and that wasn't even the worst part. He completed only 40% of his passes, throwing for 140 yards with 2 interceptions. The Gators didn't score a single point in the second half as they fell to Kentucky. Richardson was able to get the Gators back in the win column the following week, but he struggled against a really bad South Florida team. He completed 55% of his passes and had only 10 completions. He threw for only 100 yards and had 2 interceptions. Through the first 3 games of the season, Richardson had yet to even throw a single touchdown pass. In Florida's next game, he finally threw that touchdown pass, and he threw for a career-high 450 yards, while also adding 60 yards on the ground with 2 rushing scores. Overall, it was a really solid performance, and he did everything he could to try and win the game for the Gators. But it wasn't enough, as Florida fell to Tennessee, moving to 2-2 on the season. Florida won their next 2 games, but Richardson was pretty underwhelming. In those 2 wins, he completed only 16 passes and threw 2 interceptions. He was then solid against LSU as he threw for 200 yards with a passing touchdown. It was his first game since week 1 in which he didn't throw an interception in a game. He also had one of the greatest plays of his career, an insane 80-yard rushing touchdown. But it wasn't enough for Florida as they fell to LSU and fell out of the top 25 the final time they'd be ranked the rest of the season. Anthony Richardson had a shot of redemption the following game as the Gators were set to take on Georgia. This outing went better than the year prior, but not by much. Richardson completed only 48% of his passes and added nothing on the ground. He did throw a touchdown pass and didn't throw an interception, but he was pretty much a non-factor in the game, and Florida fell to 4-4 on the season. Over the final 4 games of the year, Florida went 2-2, finishing the regular season 6-6. Although the wins weren't all there, this was actually the best stretch from Richardson all season. In a win against Texas A&M, he threw for 200 yards with 2 passing touchdowns and no interceptions. It was the only game of his career in which he had at least 2 passing touchdowns, 200 passing yards, and didn't throw an interception. He also added 80 yards on the ground with 2 rushing scores. The following week, in a win against South Carolina, Richardson once again threw 2 passing touchdowns with 0 interceptions. He also rushed for 100 yards with a rushing score as well. Florida ended up losing their final 2 games of the season, but Anthony Richardson threw for a combined 600 yards with 6 passing touchdowns. If you want to find a negative out of that, he did throw 2 interceptions and completed only 49% of his passes. That would be it for Anthony Richardson as he opted out of the bowl game to declare for the NFL draft. For the season, he finished with 2,500 passing yards and 17 passing touchdowns, but overall, he was near the bottom when it came to SEC quarterbacks. He was 9th in passing touchdowns and 10th in passing yards. He did rush for 650 yards with 9 rushing touchdowns, so he was one of the better runners in the entire conference. But the biggest takeaway from his season was his completion percentage, as he completed only 53.8% of his passes. If that sounds bad, well, it's because it is. Among 113 qualified FBS quarterbacks, Richardson ranked 105th in regards to his completion percentage. He showed flashes and glimpses of being an elite quarterback, but for most of the season, he was just very inconsistent. Still, he opted to test his talent in the NFL draft as opposed to remaining in Florida for one more season. Fast forward to the NFL Combine, and everyone knew that Richardson was likely going to impress and build his stock, but I don't think anyone expected him to put together the weekend that he did. Among quarterbacks at the combine since 2003, Richardson had the best broad jump and the best vertical leap. His 4.44 40-yard dash was also the second best as well. Overall, he earned a maximum athleticism score of 99, which you could say is pretty good. Here's a list of quarterbacks with the highest relative athletic scores of all time. Richardson is one of only 3 quarterbacks to ever post a perfect score, but his all-time RAS score is the highest ever recorded for a quarterback. In addition to that, Richardson also posted the highest athleticism score ever, tied with RG3 as the only quarterbacks to ever score a 99. Anthony Richardson also impressed throwing the ball and apparently tested very well in interviews. He was a combine darling and his draft stock has never been higher. As of the recording of this video, Bryce Young is still the betting favorite to be the first quarterback selected in the draft, but Richardson is now right behind him. And at this rate, I wouldn't be surprised if a team ends up selecting him as the number 1 quarterback in April. I get that the college numbers weren't necessarily there, but Anthony Richardson offers more upside than any other quarterback in this class. I mean, he's drawn comparisons to both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Sure, he'll have to prove he can actually play quarterback at the NFL level, but the talent and hype is certainly there. So, what are your thoughts on the rapid rise of Anthony Richardson? If you were an NFL team who desperately needed a quarterback, would he be your first pick? Or does his completion percentage barely being over 50% worry you? Let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you love college football, then this is definitely the place for you. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm posting college football videos all off season, so make sure to subscribe if you call yourself a college football fan. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.